Thank you. As Dan alluded, my name is John Calderon. I'm married and I have two children that are sometimes they're great. Um, I'm currently the director at Dixon Hollow Presbyterian Homes and Services. It's a faith-based organization, and they're based out of Minnesota. Um, it's a nonprofit organization. Uh, we hire about 6,300 employees, and we serve about 26,000 older adults. And we provide, excuse me, we provide senior living communities throughout Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. And our mission is to serve and enrich the lives and touch the hearts of older adults through the services we provide. And my team provides a warm, loving, comfortable environment that folks want to call home. So thank you for allowing me to be here today. So when I was asked to speak here at the tour, I thought, sure, I'll do it. And I really don't know what I was thinking because I'm not a public speaker. And I was a little nervous coming up here today. And so when I started to put words to paper, I didn't want to just give you my work history. I felt that you need a little bit something more than just my resume. And so I'm going to go back to when I was born and just give you a brief history of my life. And so here we go, and wish me luck. So by a show of hands, who knows somebody that's adopted? Almost everybody. Well, by the end of this, you will all know because I've been adopted. So in 1970, I was born in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and I was born at the Tachita Correctional Institute. Tachita is a prison for that housed female inmates. See, my mother was in prison. She had killed one of my siblings, and I'll have to apologize because sometimes I can get a little emotional, and this might get a little more emotional for me. But I'm not really sure about the details, but that's another story for another day. So, but when I was 5 days old, my aunt and uncle received a call from the Correctional Institute, and they said that they were informed that if they were not going to take custody of me, that I would be awarded custody of the state foster system. So 5 days old, they drive in a snowstorm up to Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, to come get me, and they really weren't anticipating me, so they didn't prepare and they didn't have the essential needs to take care of me. So they made do with what they had, and when they brought me home, there was a cadenza in the dining room, and the middle drawer was my bed. And they already had 7 children of their own that they were taking care of, and 6 of my older brothers and sisters, biological siblings. And they didn't really have much to give, but what they gave to me was the most important thing in life, and that was love. They loved me unconditionally, and they raised me as one of their own, and just gave me unconditional love and helped me become the man that I am today. So when school began, I was just like any other kid. I was eager to learn, and I wanted to go to school. I was excited, but learning didn't come easy for me. It was difficult. I had difficulties comprehending and retaining information. So needless to say, I had to work really hard. But I got involved in sports, and I was pretty good. I was not the best, but I was better than most. And so in order to be in sports, you have to get good grades. So I worked really hard to be a C student. I went on to graduate high school, went to college at Western Wisconsin Technical College, got married, had a few kids, started my family, and then we moved to Wisconsin from Texas. And how many people here, by a show of hands, knew that they were a servant leader before they even knew what servant leadership was? Excellent. Well, I really didn't know I was a servant leader until I started my job 21 years ago. And there I was helping a gentleman on a wheelchair. I was in the security department, and I was helping a gentleman on a wheelchair, and we were engaged in a real good conversation. And at one point he says, "You seem like a really nice guy. Would you be interested in doing some volunteer work?" And I was like, "Well, what do you have?" He says, "Well, I'm the the head of the volunteer services for the Wisconsin Spinal Cord Injury Association Respite Center for Wisconsin. So they have a pavilion down at the Summerfest State Grounds. And the pavilion is an air-conditioned place in the middle of the grounds next to the Miller Lite Oasis. And we provide wheelchair accessibility to folks with disabilities, and a place for them to get out of the elements. And so I was able to meet lots of wonderful people, my family and I volunteering there, and hear their stories. And it really made me feel humbled to hear their stories. So after a year and a half, I switched over into the maintenance department. And in the maintenance department, I learned everything from HVAC to plumbing, electrical, everything in between, you name it. And one day my supervisor came to me and he said, "John, you're in charge of the pneumatic tube system. Sink or swim." I thought, I don't know enough to even work on it, let alone be in charge of it. And he said, "Sink or swim," and he walked away. All these negative things were going through my head like, wow, what the heck am I going to do? I don't know anything, and I felt like I was sinking. But I was on the phone with tech support every day, learning how to troubleshoot and repair the system. And how many people are familiar with the pneumatic tube system? Okay, a few people, all right. Well, if you're not familiar with a pneumatic tube system, it is used to transport items safely and efficiently between two destinations. So, for example, for the lab is sending blood to the ORs. The pharmacy is sending medications to the ICUs, nursing units. The bank teller sending your walking around money for the weekend. Okay, well, in the hospital, there was 10 miles of pipe throughout the system, and hundreds of devices that it could go to. And it allowed me to get through all areas of the hospital, nursing units, the clinics, labs, ICUs, ERs, ORs. There was tragedy all over the hospital, but there was miracles happening daily, and I felt that I had a small part in those miracles that were taking place, because my system transported the blood, the medicines, the supplies that were needed for those patients, for the staff to help the patients get well, and they even help save lives sometimes. So, I took great pride in that, because I thought, well, one day maybe my family members' health depended upon the timeliness of those medications and supplies. Heck, even my life could possibly be in jeopardy and could depend upon that system. So I took great pride in that system. So walking through the hospital, I could see families in turmoil and disarray and confused and worried. So I took it upon myself to engage at least 3 people a day, just to say hi to them, to put maybe a smile on their face for a brief moment of the day. And I can tell you that really kept me grounded, and it made me thankful that I could go to work, be able to go to work and leave work daily, because some of these folks were there and there were some serious conditions. And so when I took over the pneumatic tube system, it had a 70% up run time. So it was 70% of the time it worked. And that's pretty poor percentages for a system that's that critical. Like I said, I took training, and I was on the phone with tech support daily, and I learned as much as I could about the system. I became an expert in the field, and I was able to get the system to run to a 98.8% uptime, runtime. So that's how much pride I took in the system. But I felt that there was more that I could offer in my job, and I was looking to advance. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to advance my career there. So during my 15 and a half years in the maintenance department, our department had 9 different management changes. And throughout those 9 changes, I was able to be considered one of the top employees in our department, and receive outstanding reviews for most of the years that I was there. Until one year, the last couple years, we had a director that was hired on, and he spoke of Robert Greenleaf and was really preaching about servant leadership. And this guy seemed like a very smart businessman, and I was very intrigued by the servant leadership that he spoke about. And so I looked it up, and I started to attend some roundtables, and I really wasn't grasping the concept at first, but I continued to go, and I noticed that something wasn't clicking between what he was preaching to us, and his words and his actions weren't quite gelling. So I continued to go to servant leadership, and I thought I'd do an experiment. And my experiment was to imitate him, to mimic him. I did look up to him as a leader, so I wanted to be more successful. And what I found out is that he approached me and he told me that I was unapproachable, that my customer service wasn't that good, and that I lacked leadership skills. And so I decided to continue to go to servant leadership. And I figured, well, he's preaching this servant leadership, but he's not displaying it. And I didn't want to be that. I wanted to go back to the person I was and continue with servant leadership. And with the help of servant leadership, and I'm also involved with WEA, which is Wisconsin Health Engineering Association. And as I started to be more involved with that, I started to see more examples of servant leadership in my daily dealings with my customers, my friends, and even in the kids that I coach. And so through servant leadership, I was able to take on a position with Congregational Home, another nursing home, another nursing facility here in Wisconsin, and become the director of plant operations there, where I manage the maintenance, housekeeping, laundry, grounds, flooring, with a staff of about 23 people. So, so how many people have been thrown into the deep end and said to them, sink or swim? How many? Great, you guys are servant leaders just by getting thrown into the deep end. So, about 10 years ago, I decided to coach baseball, Little League baseball. And I thought, well, this is a good way for me to engage with my son and learn with him the game of baseball. And I thought it was great until a few practices in. I learned that several of the kids, maybe all the kids, had a ADD or some type of learning disability. And I thought to myself, what did I get myself into? So, and there was this young boy by the name of Robert. And Robert was really defiant and just all over the place. And his grandma would come to the practices and she would yell, Robert, 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 all the way through practice, from the beginning of the practice, middle practice, and the practice. Okay, so one day I intervene. Robert's being really sassy to his grandma, and I intervene. I tell him, Robert, your grandma loves you. She brings you here. She spends all this time taking you to and from practice, and you should show her some respect. And because you're not showing her respect, you're going to have to run some laps. So I made him run laps. And when he came back, he said, you know what? I'm going to give your grandma my phone number. And if she ever has any problems with you at night, whatever the time it is, she's going to call me and I'm going to come over and I'm going to straighten you out. And he was like, whoa, this guy's serious. So one day, Robert's grandma does call me. Get on the phone with him. Like, so what's going on, Robert? Why are you being so sassy? And he explains some things that he didn't agree with. And I said, well, do you need me to come over to talk to you? He's like, nope, I'm good. So the next day, grandma thanks me. And after coaching Robert, he went on and his grandma went on after coaching. And years later, I run into to Robert's grandma. And she comes up to me and she gives me the biggest hug. And she says, I'm so happy I ran into you. You're one of the greatest things that happened to us. So you took the time for Robert to believe in him, to make him believe in himself, give him some discipline. Robert now is a young man, being successful, doing well. He's in the military, and he's doing really well. So she wanted to thank me for that. which is really exciting to be a part of that situation.